Hello, I'm Natasha Marsh. This is number 0833, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0833. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, we remember Eileen Fulton, daytime's grande dame who starred on As the World Turns for 50 years. We remember her with part of an interview we did back in 1995 with her. How did her character of Lisa change over the decades?
When I first started, I was a real lying, scheming, conniving person. Not I was. I mean, my character Lisa was. It was a wonderful character part. This is why I'm an actor. I like to create something different. I want to live different lives. So I do this in acting. That's the whole joy of it, is creating something new. So she was totally not like Eileen back then. But as the years went on and we changed, had many different writers, I didn't have very much to do, and so I decided to make her dippy.
Mike Occomore, the executive producer of the Pro Bono Group, talks about the pro-Canada PSAs they've created with celebrities that are currently running on just about every radio station in Canada and shows like this one. Who was the first celebrity in the campaign?
The first person we called was Ron James. He's the comedian from the East Coast. We called Ron, we had his number, and when we called him, he was down east at the time. He'd already driven down there on a vacation. When he heard what we were doing, he was so passionate about being involved. He offered to jump on a plane the next day on his own dime, fly back to Toronto to record, and then fly back to get his car. Fortunately, we didn't have to get him to do that. But that's the kind of passion we found. And almost everybody that we had do one of the Pro-Canada messages, they were offering suggestions on other people to get.
Stuart Nulman is along with another edition of Book Banter.
Hi, I'm Stuart Nulman, and Book Banter cries out aloud, Babaloo, with a new biography of Desi Arnaz. No further splaining needed, and it all happens soon on the Stuff File program.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, morning shower thoughts, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest slater, the person who told you this was show number 0833, was Natasha Marsh, who is the co-owner of the Dorchester Jail Bed and Breakfast. She was a guest on show number 0821. You can go there and you'll find the link on our interesting conversation about the 150-year-old New Brunswick jail that she and her husband now lives in and have turned it into a bed and breakfast. Thank you very much, Natasha, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. A 27-year-old Indian man, Mumbai businessman Raphael Samuel, intends to sue his parents for bringing him into the world without his consent. Samuel, an advocate for anti-natalism, believes that life entails suffering and argues that individuals should be compensated for being born. His parents, both lawyers, and clearly they should have known better, appear to be handling the situation with humor. Samuel's mother acknowledged his boldness and expressed willingness to accept fault if he could provide a rational explanation for seeking consent before birth. Despite facing criticism and negative responses, Samuel remains steadfast in his belief that a world without human beings would be better. He plans to file a lawsuit to emphasize his point, even though he anticipates it will likely be dismissed. You know, someone should sit this man-child down and force him every year, like we do here in North America, at Christmas to watch It's a Wonderful Life.
I suppose it'd been better if I'd never been born at all.
What'd you say?
I said I wish I'd never been born.
He might agree with George Bailey in the beginning, but spoiler alert, Samuel is in for a revelation at the end of that movie. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first segment here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, in Wisconsin, 85 individuals fell ill after unknowingly consuming THC-infused food from a local pizzeria. The CDC reported that customers ranging from 1 to 91 years old experienced symptoms consistent with THC intoxication after eating items like pizza, garlic bread, and sandwiches from the shop. 7 of them required hospitalization due to symptoms such as dizziness, sleepiness, and anxiety. The pizzeria shared a kitchen with a state-licensed business that uses THC-infused cooking oil, leading to unintentional contamination. Following an investigation, the pizzeria reopened after cleaning and sanitization. I'm guessing none of the customers would have passed a field sobriety test.
How high are you?
Hi, how are you?
No, I said, how high are you?
Hi, how are you?
Okay, I am going to have to conduct a pot sobriety test.
Oh, man, I'm too high for that.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a few questions to determine your ability to drive. Why is a pizza box square when the pizza's a circle and all the little slices are tiny triangles?
Whoa.
Isn't pizza how this all started? Yeah. Anyway, let's get to our first segment here on this edition of the Stuff All program, shall we? Eileen Fulton, one of the grand dames of daytime who played Lisa Grimaldi on As the World Turns for 50 years from 1960 to 2010, died on July 14th at the age of 91. As a lifelong viewer of As the World Turns, I had the pleasure of talking to her back in June of 1995 for a live hour on my old radio show when she was promoting her book, As My World Still Turns, the Uncensored Memoirs of America's Soap Opera Queen. Here is just part of that conversation now. Now, as I've mentioned on several times, I've been watching the show for a long time, so let me see if I get the name right here. It would be Lisa Miller Hughes Eldridge Shea Coleman McCall Mitchell Grimaldi.
Yes, and almost Hadley at one point.
Almost?
Uh-huh. She's only had 7 husbands, and the last marriage, I thought it lasted a day and a half before they killed Eduardo. But I found out in my script I'm going to do very soon that I mentioned it was 3 days, so it actually was longer, and yes, it was consummated. Everybody wants to know that.
Okay. You've been playing Lisa for a long time. How much of Lisa is you? How much of you is Lisa?
Well, when I first started, I was a real lying, scheming, conniving person. Not I was. I mean, my character, Lisa, was. It was a wonderful character part. This is why I'm an actor. I like to create something different. I want to live different lives. So I do this in acting. That's the whole joy of it, is creating something new. So she was totally not like Eileen back then. But as the years went on and we changed, had many, many different writers, I didn't have very much to do, so I decided to make her Dippy. And I've had great fun being Dippy. And now the writers who are here now say, oh, she can really do an awful bad girl. Let's bring back the old bad girl. So they've had me do wonderful things. I have loved every minute of it. Oh, and I will say that when Doug Marlin was writing our show, he really knew Lisa and gave me some wonderful stuff to do as well.
Now, as you say, you started to play the role of Lisa Dippy, but as I recall, in just a recent episode of As the World Turns, Catherine Hayes, who plays your, I guess, your closest friend on the show, she mentioned the fact that, Lisa, you can be Dippy when you want to be, but everyone knows you're not.
Yes. That's very true. Oh, and I'm making her so mad now. We're having the most wonderful fight. Not Catherine and Eileen, but
Lisa and Kim.
Lisa and Kim. Oh, we're tearing each other apart.
There's also been a concern in a lot of the soaps, and I think this is one of the reasons why As the World Turns is such a powerful soap the way it is, because it keeps with the core actors. It doesn't push actors and actresses to the side just because they age, just because there's a lack of a storyline. Sometimes you go on back burner, but there's always something to do for the various actors who are on that show. It doesn't spend, for instance, a lot of shows in the summertime, you never seem to get away from the beachwear scenes with teeny boppers running around.
Well, we do have a lot of pretty bodies running around, and that's fine, but I think it's very important when a soap realizes that your audience is interested in all ages, and you can have a great storyline for the kids, and you can also dovetail that with the storyline of the older people. And I found that kids are kind of interested in the older storyline, too, because they're thinking, when I get to be that age, well, what would I do to him or her? And it's an interesting little thing. You've got to have something for everyone.
Well, I also read somewhere recently in an article that you were saying that you had more fun playing Lisa. To you, playing Lisa is tearing up somebody else's marriage.
Oh, it's far more fun because then it's really, you have a direct line, you know exactly where you're going. And I got so tired of, but I'm not complaining, but I got tired of being always at the Mona Lisa, being on the fringe of everybody's storyline. But hey, we all have to do that on a soap opera. We all have to take a back seat every now and then. But it seemed like for years I was saying, oh, hello, Lucy, are we dining alone tonight? I'm so glad that I'm doing a bit more now and causing a lot of trouble. Actually, I think it's kind of ingenious what they've invented in the storyline is to have this one thing, this one event where Eduardo was shot and then unfortunately dies at the hospital, and Lisa suing John for malpractice has absolutely split up Oakdale. It has touched every life that we have seen.
Nowadays, soap opera stars seem to be more revered than they used to be. There was a time when they were looked at as poor second cousins almost of nighttime and then behind film work. But you're now getting your due, aren't you, as a soap actor?
Yes, indeed. We certainly are. And I think that it's probably that as people have become, perhaps it happened a long time ago when the soaps first came on the air, people who watched the shows were generally at home. And those who did not were at work, and those were the ones who were writing about it, and they scoffed at it. They made fun of the soap operas because they'd never seen it. And the only times they saw it was when they were very sick or in the hospital or running a high fever. And who could like anything at that point? I think it's amazing anyone would even attempt when running a high fever. So we did have our long haul. But you see, with the next generation that came along, these people have they grew up watching the soap operas, so they have a different feeling for it. And the shows are much more sophisticated. But then when you look back at old shows on television, the old shows, the reruns, you'll see it has improved nighttime and daytime.
What about the dividing between you and your character? I mean, another thing that people seem to be more aware of is the actor or actress who plays a role. I know as growing up watching As the World Turns, if someone said to me many, many years ago when I was watching the show, when I first started watching the show, Eileen Fulton, I would say, who's Eileen Fulton? But now I can say, oh, Eileen Fulton, she plays Lisa.
Well, I have a wonderful press agent, number one, and we keep the name out there. It's interesting, though, how people identify with the character. I write about this in my book. Some of the funny instances I've had with the audience. The first time I was ever recognized was when I had just been on the show just a few short months, and Lisa had just married Bob, and I was being awful. I was just running around with Bruce in the bushes and all of that stuff, and I was standing in front of Saks Fifth Avenue, and this woman in a beautiful pink Chanel suit came up to me, and she said, "Excuse me, aren't you Lisa?" And I thought, oh, my first autograph. And I said, well, yes, that's the part I play. And I opened up my bag to get out my beautiful new Tiffany pen to sign her an autograph. She said, oh, I hate you. And she bopped me right there. Knocked me across the street, knocked my pen in the gutter. And everybody stood and looked at me like, oh, you horrible, sneaky little devil. And let that woman just walk away.
The power of live television.
Yes.
Eileen, we are aware of the fact that you are originally from North Carolina, correct?
Yes.
And we can hear your lovely accent every day on the program. Has it ever been explained where Lisa comes from?
Yes, she comes from southern Illinois, Rockford.
So how do we explain the accent?
Actually, when I first started on the show, I did not have much of an accent, and you probably noticed it more than most people. We haven't bothered to, because I really did not when I first started on the show. You see, as the years went on, and I started doing a lot of nightclub work, and I loved singing. I worked with jazz musicians, and it just kind of rubbed off again in a funny way.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the things you do outside of As the World Turns, because a lot of people aren't aware of that, and I guess that's one of the main reasons for the book, too.
Well, yes.
You do a nightclub act.
I do a nightclub act. I love Gladys Shelley's music, and I do Duke Ellington and all kinds of wonderful things. I've sung all over, everywhere, and I have a trio, piano, bass, and drums, and I have 3 dogs, talking about trios. I have Sarah Bernhardt, the Pekingese, and our Sir Lawrence Olivier, the Shih Tzu dog, Lala, and Simone Signoret, my little baby Shih Tzu.
Are people surprised when they see you on stage in roles other than what they're familiar with as Lisa?
Well, I've quit the show 3 times forever, and I talk about that, too. The last time I quit forever, in 83, I went all over the country, and I came to Canada to do different plays in dinner theaters. Plaza Suite, mainly, was my main one that I did, and Goodbye Charlie was a silly one that I did. When I came out in Plaza Suite, the first character in the show, I played 3 different women in that. In the first act, Karen was supposed to be fat. Now, there's a picture of me in the book. As I put on this body fat, and you just slip into it and snap it on the shoulders. It's just body fat. And then I put the dress on over it, and it gave me kind of a pudge look. So when I came out on the stage in theater in the round, I heard the audience gasp, and they said, "Oh, she has let herself go," said she quit the show. And then in the second act, when I came out, I was just myself, my slender self, and I got a standing ovation. Isn't that just silly?
Yes. How far in advance do you shoot, Eileen?
We're 3 weeks ahead.
And how far in advance do you know beyond that?
I don't even know 3 weeks at this point. I know overall story, but I don't know the big things like I was being asked. I really don't know. We have a new producer, and I have to talk with him. I haven't had my talk yet.
Does that cause problem? Because I know the 3 P&G Procter & Gamble shows went through a change, and I know, for instance, there was a time after Douglas Marland passed away that there was a bit of a slip.
Oh, it was a terrible thing, just a horrible shock to everybody when that happened. I don't think actually, Peter, I don't think I gave Doug his due in the book. I was so crushed by it. I really couldn't talk about it for a long time, and I mentioned him just in his wonderful, he was very psychic, and he did some very strange and marvelous things that twisted in with everyone's lives on the show, and he wasn't even aware of it. He just wrote about it, and it would be our lives after we had gone through it, or before, or as we're going through it, which happened to me when I got rid of husband number 2.
That was
Danny, the record producer.
Okay.
I talk about that. There was no problem.
Yeah, you talk about your own personal life.
Yes.
With you haven't been married as many times as Lisa has.
Oh,
but
only 3.
Only 3.
Yes, it's 10 between the 2 of us.
When I spoke last year to Don Hastings, I asked him about being on the show for so long. Was there a period of time when he thought that with the lulls in the show, because it can't be at its peak all the time, if there was a period when he thought he'd want to quit because things were just doing so badly with him and his character? And he mentioned the whole situation when he was married to Miranda that he wasn't too crazy about. Was there a period of time, I know you've actually left the show on several occasions, but there was a time when you just thought, I can't do this anymore?
Oh, yes. I thought that a lot. I did that for the first time when I quit. Lisa had been such a sneak and a devil, and she was such fun, and then she suddenly had to be so full of remorse and feel so sorry for herself. And I hated slopping around and feeling sorry for myself. And it got to be a bore. And I was doing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf on Broadway, and off-Broadway, at the same time, I was doing The Fantastics. So I thought, my plate's full, and I just decided to leave, just willy-nilly like that. It's just by luck that I've come back, and that I had the sense to come back. I had no idea of the power at that point.
With all the things that has happened in soaps, people always talk about some of the outrageous plot lines that have taken place in the soaps. I guess the one that you're most known for is the Phantom Fetus.
That was so embarrassing. That was truly my most unfavorite storyline, having to walk around. By the way, we use pillows for pregnancies. You don't have to really be pregnant. I thought I might drop that. They had me stuffed with this little pillow, and I had to walk around and say, I'm pregnant, and I don't know how it happened. I am so pregnant. How did it happen? I've never been this pregnant. And I got so tired of saying that. 3 months, I'd walk around and say, I'm pregnant, and I don't know how it happened. And this woman from Birmingham, Alabama, sent me a letter and enclosed a pamphlet and said, it was from the Planned Parenthood. And she said, Dear Lisa, this is how it happened. Now get on with it.
With all the things that happen in soaps, the outrageous plot lines, the things that your characters, other characters have done, do you ever get the script and you go, you've got to be kidding?
Yeah, we do that occasionally. When this has happened, if it really is outrageous to one's own dignity and protection of the character, you have to go in and talk with the producer immediately. and work out something. And it's always wise to have a solution yourself, because if you push it right up to the day we're taping, there's no way to change it.
Do they see you as the keeper of Lisa's flame? I mean, you've been doing the show for
Yes.
so long now. Do they come to you and say, would Lisa do this or would Lisa not do this?
Yes, I have been asked that, yes. But right now, I think they know Lisa pretty well. I'm just delighted with what they are doing, because they're reaching back to old story in a way, bringing out why, for instance, why Lisa hates John, and her being so upset with Kim, and just loving the fact that Bob is being kind to her. Mm-hmm. He's her only ally.
One of the other things that even my mother brought this one up.
Uh-huh.
The infamous grandma clause.
I wondered when you were going to ask me that. I have it written down on a piece of paper to mention it if you didn't.
Okay.
It was so important to me. This is when I had have a say in Lisa, and to keep her going. If it were not for the granny clause, I don't even know if Lisa would be on the show now. Because back in the 70s, Lisa was having this hot affair with Michael Shea, and they grew Tom up, and I went away on vacation and came back, and he was going to get married to Carol. And I said, he cannot get married, because if he gets married, that means that I will be a grandmother. And they said, well, yes, of course, a legitimate grandmother. And I said, well, I will not be a grandmother, because you do not write for grandmothers. Grandmothers at that time, in the 70s, they took away their love life, they took away the bedroom, they took away everything, stuck them in the kitchen, and that was the end of them, because they didn't realize that grandparents and older people have a jolly good life, let me put it that way. So I said, I will not sign my contract, because just as luck would have it, my contract was up, and it was in July. And I said, I will not re-sign unless I get a clause stating that Tom will not be a father. So they had to put in, because I was serious, and I had horrible fights about this. In fact, I almost broke my hand slamming it on a desk. But anyway, I got that clause, and for many years, Tom could not be a father. And when he married Carol, which he did, we called her Sterile Carol. And then he married Natalie, and she was naughty Natalie, who couldn't do anything. Then, finally, I just dropped that clause, because I was old enough by then. In the 70s, I was just 30-something. I'll be 62 this year, so I'm going to say that right now, so you don't have to figure what my age is.
Okay.
So I was in my 30s, and I was, at that point, for the soap opera, too young to be a grandmother. And I was not going to let that happen, because Claire Casson became a grandmother, and then she became a great-grandmother, and the woman was only 39, Barbara Bird, was just a young woman. And what did they do? They couldn't handle it, so they hit her with a truck. And I said, no, this is not going to happen to me. So I saved Lisa's life by having that, but I do not have that clause anymore. But when Tom and Margot lost their baby, the audience remembered the clause, which I had long since forgotten about, and blamed me. This is so odd, because now everybody knows that we're actors playing a part. They blamed me, Eileen Fulton, for the death of this pillow. Isn't that horrible? And I got life-threatened. Oh, terrible letters, horrible letters. And the producers got them. Everybody got them. And I had a bodyguard. I had a driver. I made him the bodyguard, and he had to build an apartment in the bottom of my house, which is a saga in itself. My life is far more raucous than Lisa's ever was. If you think Lisa was something, read my book. What can I say?
As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the times we have actors who go off and to do other things. They do nighttime, they do films. I mean, there's been a series of actresses and actors who have gone through As the World Turns, from
Right.
Marissa Tomei to Meg Ryan, Juliana Moore just recently. And
Yes.
the list goes on and on and
Oh,
on.
it does.
Do you often wonder if did you have desires for the big screen for yourself?
Of course I did. I was never at the right place at the right time. But yes, when I look at it, I think I am so lucky to have 35 years on this show. It's just wonderful, because I do have a good contract. I can go out and sing. I can go out and I can do some other things. I can do nighttime if I'm at the right place at the right time. I can do a movie. I can do any of this. I just have to do it.
When you first stepped on that soundstage as Lisa Miller 35 years ago, how long did you think you'd be on that show?
No longer than a year. No longer than a year. And when they forced me to sign a 7-year contract, I got them down to 5. I thought, my life is over. I felt nauseated riding through Central Park. I thought, oh, God, I have done myself in. What? I have sold myself down the river. I don't think I have.
I don't think the fans will think that either, and it really was a pleasure being able to talk to you this evening.
I'm sorry, I've talked your ear off.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I wish we had more time.
I do too. I have really enjoyed it.
That was just a segment from the late Eileen Fulton of As the World Turns fame. She was promoting her book, As My World Still Turns, the uncensored memoirs of America's soap opera queen. That was back in June of 1995. Eileen died on July 14th at the age of 91. Both as Lisa and Eileen, she was always a hoot. By the way, her book is still available. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0833, and you'll find the links to either amazon.com or amazon.ca, where you can order her book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
What do you call a lazy baby kangaroo? A pouch potato.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like. But the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffile-program.
I'm standing for Canada. Hi, this is Haley Wickenheiser, and I'm proud to be representing my country again. Every time I go shopping, let's support Canadian companies and buy products made in Canada. You'll be protecting Canadian jobs and Canadian business, kind of like standing on a podium while they play our anthem. Shop as if your country depends on it, because it does. Keep your money in Canada, for Canada.
From Montreal, Canada, and spanning the globe like a butterfly on speed, this is The Stuff File with Peter Anthony Holder.
And still to come in the program, we'll talk to Mike Occomore, who is the executive producer of the Pro Bono Group, about those pro-Canada PSAs. Stuart Nulman is in with another edition of Book Banter. And, of course, there is still a morning shower thought coming your way, and an idiot of the day, and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. Well, here is something that ought to make Michael Jackson laugh. A single bedazzled sock worn by Jackson during a 1990s concert in France recently sold for over $8,000 at auction. A technician discovered the used sock abandoned near Jackson's dressing room after a show in Nîmes in 1997. The self-proclaimed king of pop frequently donned rhinestone-embellished white athletic socks as part of his costuming for the History World Tour that year. Though stained and discolored decades later, the auctioneer described the item as an exceptional and cult collectible for Jackson's dedicated fan base. This follows other record-breaking Jackson memorabilia sales, including a $350,000 glittery glove from his famous 1983 moonwalk performance, and an $80,000 hat from that same era. Wow. That's a literal Michael Jackson laundry list. Thousands of giant tarantulas are expected to emerge from the ground in parts of California, Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, and Texas from August through October. While mostly harmless, these softball-sized spiders can bite, flick irritating hairs, or cause alarm as they move through campsites, backyards, and roads. The annual mating season will see male tarantulas venturing out in search of female partners, with sightings expected to peak in the coming months. Residents and visitors are advised to give these creatures space and avoid touching them, as their barbed hairs can cause irritation. Female tarantulas live up to 25 years, while males die shortly after mating. Well, when you finally get some, life is pretty much over. By the way, you know someone out there is going to be hunting these creatures down.
You eight-legged freaks!
A family from Charleston, South Carolina, filed a federal lawsuit against Delta Airlines, claiming that their child's missing iPad, in a Peppa Pig case, was used by an airline worker to create explicit videos that appeared in their cloud storage.
Please tell me what pictures you see.
The incident allegedly occurred during a trip from Charleston to New York and then London, where they discovered the iPad was missing.
Peppa is looking for George's tablet and headphones.
After tracking the device to New York using Apple's app, the family found selfies of a man in a Delta uniform and later explicit videos. Despite reporting the situation to Delta, the family received only automated responses.
Welcome aboard. We hope you enjoy your flight with us today.
Delta stated that the accused individual is not their employee, but works for a vendor company. Gee, I guess Delta isn't ready when you are. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, this is a plea from the U.S. Transportation Security Administration. It said, and I quote, "Okay, friends, please, and we cannot emphasize this enough, stop hiding animals in weird places on your body and then trying to sneak them through airport security." That plea came after an unnamed woman went through security in Miami with 2 turtles stuffed into her bra. One was wrapped up in medical tape with its head sticking out. The other was wrapped fully in plastic. One died, and you can probably guess which one. They were apparently pets, and TSA points out that it's completely legal to travel with pets, though they must be removed from their carriers and carried through the checkpoint. Notice they said carried and not hidden underneath your clothing, like a bra. The turtle that lived was confiscated by the Florida Department of Fish and Wildlife. The woman was apparently not arrested or fined. You know, I still don't think we're quite sure if she was trying to smuggle them or if she was just kinky.
That's why I love turtles.
Anyway, let's get to our next guest here on this edition of the Stuff All program, shall we? Regular listeners to the Stuff All program know that for the last several months, we've been playing pro-Canada PSAs featuring Canadian celebrities. It's a very successful campaign right across the country, and it's created by a company called the Pro Bono Group. They regularly provide free public service announcements for worthwhile causes and charities. Mike Occomore is the executive producer at the Pro Bono Group. He joins us via Zoom from Toronto. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for being on the program with us. Again, as I said just before we started recording this, this is a great campaign, but it's also one of many great campaigns that you have created over the years. How did the Pro Bono Group start, first of all?
Well, it goes back 27 years ago. 4, friends in radio, longtime friends in radio. We were getting together, a couple times a year for lunches in Toronto. And the friends were Larry McGuinness. Larry was creative director at Chum at the time. I was a writer at Chum. Mike Tennant was someone who we had worked with at Chum and then had turned into a freelance guy. And Terry O'Reilly was the 4th guy. And Terry at the time was a co-owner and co-founder of Pirate Radio in Toronto, which was one of the hottest radio and television audio production studios in North America. So we were getting together. One day, Mike Tennant showed up at the lunch, and he said, "Hey guys, I'm thinking about doing some PSA work for Amnesty International. They want to do a thing on torture. They want to bring torture to the attention of the world because it's happening in a lot of countries." Are you guys interested in helping out? And we all said, of course we are. So from there, Terry is the one who jumped in, and Terry said, look, he said, how about you guys write the scripts and I will cast the talent and we can record everything at pirate radio with the best talent, and it won't cost anybody a dime. So that's how the kind of the pro bono thing started about 27 years ago. So Amnesty was the first one, and then after that, kind of every year we did a project or two. We did a ton of work for the Canadian Red Cross. We've done work for the Stephen Lewis Foundation. We did work for a place called Mary Centre in Toronto, which is for adults with developmental challenges. And then it kind of continued on with it, a lot of different campaigns over the years. And then when COVID hit, the whole homelessness crisis really came to the forefront, and so did the crisis with food banks. So we saw a real need there to do something, and we launched national campaigns for both of those. And we continue to this day to do a lot of work for both of those causes. And then our latest one with the Pro Canada campaign, that just kind of came out of nowhere. We weren't really looking for more work to do, but suddenly in February, when the tariffs were threatened against Canada, we really saw a need to do something, and people wanted to kind of step in and help out as well too. So that's kind of the story.
Well, I want to go back a little bit because you mentioned homelessness, and I think you mentioned the food banks, right?
Yes.
And we're going to play a PSA right now called called Help You with the food banks, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Okay.
We had food growing up, and we were used to being able to eat, but then all of a sudden, we needed that help. That's why the food bank is here. They're here to help you, and they're here to help you.
The food bank is for anyone who needs one. Visit the food bank near you to help and be helped.
Now, I understand you have a rather interesting story about this particular production. First of all, who is the person who voiced it?
It's a woman by the name of Kat Carter. She is a radio announcer, and I knew her just a little bit. She worked at Chum for a short period and some other stations in Toronto. I think she was out in Vancouver as well, an announcer. Really great talent. What happened was we had, like I mentioned, we had done our food bank campaign a few years ago that was ongoing, and we were very lucky to win a couple of awards with the campaign. So what happened, this is through Broadcast Dialogue, and it's their annual radio awards. So they called us up and said, you guys mind being on a streaming call when we announce the winners? We said, no problem. So Larry and I, my partner, were on the call, and with us, there were a couple of the awards judges there as well, too. So when they announced our awards, Kat immediately jumped in, and she thanked us for doing the campaign. And she said, I love the fact that the idea of the campaign was to help remove the stigma of having to use a food bank, because so many people have to. In fact, I can tell you from personal experience that I'm someone who had to use a food bank. So we thought, wow, that was very honest of her to say that. So we, Larry and I immediately spoke after the call, and we agreed we got to talk to Kat and see if she's willing to share her story across the country on radio. And we got in touch with her, and she immediately jumped in and said, yes, I have no problem doing that. So we booked a studio, got Kat into the studio, and we didn't come in with a script. We thought, well, there's no way you can write this. You just have to have her talk. So we got her in the booth and said, Kat, just tell us your story. Why did you have to use a food bank? And she sat there and spoke for probably 5, 7, 8 minutes. And it was just very honest and heartwarming and powerful what she was saying. And we just took it from there and edited it down to a short version. But so what you heard was her real story. So it was, to me, it just kind of gives me goosebumps. We've had so many comments about that particular PSA over the past couple of years, and hats off to Kat for be willing to jump in and support it.
Well, again, as I said, it's very, very powerful. Let's get to the current campaign for the brief time that we have left, and that is the Pro Canada PSAs that you are doing right now, and it's ongoing. And there's one that's, of course, going to be in this particular show as well, as I have put in for several months on this show. As lauded as your company has been over the years, was there any difficulty or trepidation in the part of celebrities to jump on this bandwagon when you first decided to put this campaign together? And conversely, now that it's rather successful, are you finding it easier to get celebrities to jump on the bandwagon?
Yes and no. You know what, it's funny because the very first ad we did, we used an announcer, was not a celebrity. We wanted to get something on very quickly, when Donald Trump was threatening Canada with tariffs and everything. So we wanted to get an ad done fast, get it on. It was within days. That's kind of the beauty of radio too. It can respond quickly. So we got it out to stations across the country very quickly. And then after that, we kept thinking, Larry and I were thinking, well, you know what, maybe this campaign will only go on for a few weeks. Maybe there won't be a need. But of course, it only got worse. And we thought, well, how can we carry this on to make it interesting? And we thought maybe the celebrity angle is a way to go. Let's see how many people are willing to step up. So that's when we started. And I'll tell you just a quick story if I can. Just the first person we called was Ron James. He's the comedian from the East Coast. Lovely guy. And we called Ron. We had his number. And when we called him, he was down east at the time. He'd already driven down there on a vacation. And when he heard what we were doing, he was so passionate about being involved. He offered to jump on a plane the next day on his own dime, fly back to Toronto to record, and then fly back to get his car. Fortunately, we didn't have to get him to do that. But that's the kind of passion we found. And almost everybody that we had do one of the Pro Canada messages, they were offering suggestions on other people to get. So and that was the case with Hayley Wickenheiser. We had her in, the hockey great, and right away she said, have you gotten Sarah McLachlan? And we said, no. And she said, do you want me to text her? We said, oh, yeah. So she helped out there to get Sarah McLachlan involved. And so it was a lot of case like that with getting people. And, we've had some people who just don't want to get involved for whatever reason. That's fair enough. But overall, people have been very enthusiastic, very passionate about helping out. This is important to them. They realize that we need to support Canada. Everybody loves this country, and we need to do more to protect jobs. And that's kind of what it's all about.
Well, again, congratulations not only on the campaign that you are currently doing, but also on the success of the business from day one. Mike, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. It's much appreciated.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Mike Occomore, the executive producer at the Pro Bono Group. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0833, and you'll find the link to the Pro Bono Group's site. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
During a nuclear explosion, would there be a certain distance of the radius where all the frozen supermarket pizzas are cooked to perfection?
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with two men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with two men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/the Stuff File program.
From our studios in Montreal, Canada, and going out to the rest of the world, this is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's time to crack a spine. The Stuff File presents Book Banter with Stuart Nulman. Once again, here's Peter Anthony Holder.
And Stuart, you have some splaining to do.
Yes, I do, Peter, and don't expect me to, sing out Babaloo, because I don't want to scare you away.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm doing it as a service not only to you, but to our loyal listeners as well.
Excellent.
Well, this edition of Book Banter, we are talking about the man behind the splainin', and yes, Babaloo also, and that's Desi Arnaz. Now, I read this new biography called Desi Arnaz, The Man Who Invented Television by Todd S. Purdom, and after reading his excellent biography, a character from the popular Broadway musical Chicago came to mind. And it's Amos Hart, Joe Schmo husband of Roxy Hart, while she was constantly grabbing headlines. Poor Amos was by her side, but completely forgotten by the general public and the press in particular. It was as if he was completely invisible. He lamented his sad personal situation quite effectively when he sang the memorable solo number Mr. Cellophane. Now, Desi Arnaz's situation practically mirrors that of Amos Hart. No matter what his accomplishments were as an entertainer, pioneering TV producer, and astute businessman in the entertainment industry, Desi couldn't shrug off the fact that he was constantly in the shadow of his famous wife, Lucille Ball, and it was a burden that he lived with until his death in 1986. Now, thankfully, this biography gives Arnaz his due and the respect for his contributions to the development of television as a mass form of popular entertainment that is so long overdue. Now, in case you're not familiar with the story of the marriage and partnership of Lucy and Desi, he was born Desiderio Alberto Arnaz y de Aca in 1917 in Santiago, Cuba, where his father was the city's popular mayor. His upbringing was a privileged one until the then Cuban president Gerardo Mercado was overthrown in a coup in 1933. Desi and his mother fled to Miami with the clothes on their back and barely able to speak English. This sudden change from a life of privilege to a life of poverty was a shock to Desi, but his resilience was remarkable. He started earning money cleaning bird cages for a friend of his father's, who raised and sold canaries, and he utilizes his musical talents to the utmost, and by the end of the decade became a local sensation with his orchestra by introducing Floridians to the conga line dance and the hot rhythms of Cuban music, especially through his trademark song Babaloo. He then became a Broadway sensation with his performance as Manolito in the hit musical Too Many Girls. And in 1940, he was brought to RKO Studios in Hollywood to perform in the movie version of Too Many Girls. That's where he met one of the female members of the cast who would play a major role in the next 20 years of his life and career, and that's Lucille Ball. They were married in 1940, and the 20-year marriage was filled with love, volatility, and collaboration. But by the end of the 40s, Desi was still popular, touring with his orchestra, and Lucy was performing in movies alongside such stars as the Three Stooges, the Marx Brothers, Katharine Hepburn, William Holden, and Henry Fonda. She also had a very popular radio sitcom on CBS called My Favorite Husband. CBS wanted to make a TV version of Husband, and as a way to save their marriage, Lucy recommended that the role of her TV husband should go to her actual husband. But the network and the sponsors ruled out that idea, believing that no viewer in post-war America would buy the idea of a sitcom with an American wife and a Cuban husband as the lead characters. But Desi proved them wrong. To show that he and Lucy could legitimately work together on stage, he organized a cross-country vaudeville tour, and in January of 1951 decided to film a TV pilot that incorporated some of their onstage routines in the format of a sitcom about a New York married couple in which the husband was a band leader in a popular nightclub and the housewife who wanted to go into show business, much to her husband's reluctance and resistance too. And that pilot became the basis of I Love Lucy, which debuted in October of 51 and became an immediate hit with the viewers across the U.S. But that wasn't enough for Desi. Purdom definitely chronicles how his penchant for innovation and strong business acumen blazed the trail for TV production and its business model in the decades ahead. There's the 3-camera system, doing the episodes in front of a live studio audience, the decision to record the episodes on film instead of the kinescope system, which led to the concept of reruns and TV syndication, and creating their own production company, everyone knows it as Desilu, that produced such future TV classics like Our Miss Brooks, December Bride, The Untouchables, Mission Impossible, and yes, Star Trek.
Yes.
Also, the book chronicles Desi's personal weaknesses that led to his personal and professional downfall. They were mainly attributed to his rampant alcoholism, constant philandering with prostitutes, and his hot temper. And by the mid-60s, Desi was thrust into oblivion and mostly forgotten by Hollywood, while Lucy was still in the spotlight thanks to the continuing popularity of I Love Lucy, as well as her subsequent starring TV vehicles, The Lucy Show and Here's Lucy, which ensured her the status as a TV legend. But Todd Purdom has succeeded in telling the multifaceted story of Desi Arnaz thanks to a number of interviews with past friends and associates, as well as with Lucy Arnaz Luckenbill and Desi Arnaz Jr., plus a valuable asset of the draft notes from the manuscript of his memoir, which revealed the thoughts and reflections of this most underappreciated and somewhat overlooked figure in the early days of television. So Desi Arnaz, the man who invented television, is a wonderful tribute to an unsung hero of an infant medium, whose vision and genius is not only still relevant 75 years later, but should also serve as the model for future TV producers and showrunners. This is part show business history, part soap opera, and mostly a story of courage and resilience. This biography strongly proves that Desi Arnaz was more than just Babalu.
And he was quite the innovator, as you mentioned earlier. But one of the other things that he innovated is the fact that, as you said, he recorded all of the shows. But the sidebar of all of that is that when the laugh track came about years later on television shows, the laughter was actually from the audience of the old I Love Lucy shows, which means that when we were growing up in the 70s and 80s, many of the people who were laughing on laugh tracks were long dead.
Yeah. And they said the loudest laughs came from Lucy and Desi's moms. They attended many of the tapings. So if you hear a lot of loud laughter from those laugh tracks, those are Mrs. Arnaz and Mrs. Ball.
So again, this week's book is?
It's called Desi Arnaz, The Man Who Invented Television by Todd S. Purdom. And it's published by Simon & Schuster, and it's $39.99.
And what other books do you recommend in this genre, sir?
Well, I recommend one book that's been a long mainstay in the Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz book canon, and that's Desilu by Coyne Stephen Sanders, which is an excellent history, not only of the couple, but the studio that they created and the impact it had on television. And also, to get it from his point of view, I recommend Desi Arnaz's 1975 memoir called, plainly enough, A Book. And it's well written. I enjoyed it, and it had modest success on the bestseller list. And he was going to do a sequel to that called Another Book, but somehow the idea fell through. But it's still a good book to read, and it's hard to find. But if you can find it, get it and read it.
I often feel, especially or even with this book, that Desi Arnaz Sr. still gets short shrift in history.
Yeah. I mean, he defied the odds. I mean, when you think of a Cuban being, the head of the house in the 1950s on a sitcom, it was unheard of. It's just too bad he gets such short shrift. Like I said, he was the Mr. Cellophane of television. But, with this book, we don't have to call him that name anymore.
Again, the book is?
Desi Arnaz, The Man Who Invented Television by Todd S. Purdom. It's published by Simon & Schuster, and it's $39.99.
And how can one find you, sir?
Well, I'm at the Tropicana Club in New York City, seeing a performance of Ricky Ricardo and his orchestra. But you can find me on the pages of, my blog, stuartnulmansgrapevine.wordpress.com, and also beststory.ca, which you can read some of my longer pieces. And also, I joined Substack, so you could find my latest pieces on there as well.
Thank you very much, Stu.
Oh, you're welcome. Now I'm just going to go start a nice little conga line, and if you can, Peter, if you want, you can just join in anytime you want.
Stuart Nulman with another edition of Book Banter here on the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
The Stuff File.
And we're just about a racetrack for this edition of the Stuff File program, but we do have one more story to share with you. And of course, boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
An Irish sports star has pleaded guilty to fraud after sharing a selfie showing an iPhone cable made to look like a hospital tube inserted up his nose. The photo fooled thousands and was used to scam people by falsely claiming he had cancer. 54-year-old DJ Carey, one of Ireland's most famous athletes and widely regarded as one of the greatest hurlers ever, appeared in Ireland's circuit court in early July. Hurling is a traditional Irish fast-paced sport played with a stick and ball. Carey pleaded guilty to pretending to have cancer in order to trick people into giving him money for fake medical treatment. The trial centered around a photograph that Carey took himself and sent to victims, appearing to show him lying in a hospital bed with a tube up his nose. The photograph, which had been widely shared online since Carey's guilty plea, and I will share it on the Stuff File program social media as well, shows what looks like a hospital tube in his nose. However, on closer inspection of the image, the tube is actually an iPhone cable taped to his face and inserted into his nostrils. Using this photo, Carey reportedly convinced people to send him money between 2014 and late 2022 by falsely claiming he needed funds for cancer treatment. The sports star even reportedly used the photo to deceive Irish billionaire Dennis O'Brien, founder of the mobile phone network Digicel. Wow. Scamming a billionaire founder of a mobile company with a picture of an iPhone cable up your nose? That's ballsy. Anyway, at court, Carey pleaded guilty to 10 out of 21 counts of deception and fraud. Now, why? Oh, why? Even though some people were fooled, did you think that you could get away with claiming to have cancer just because you shoved an iPhone cable up your nose for a selfie? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0833. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com, and once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0833. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including kdxradio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Today's broadcast could be heard directly in your home, car, or wireless device, or on your computer, so you can listen on an outpatient basis. For those of you hearing this show directly inside your head, please adjust your medication.